Okay, so let's begin. Welcome, friends, to our wonderful satsang this evening, where my very good friend Jitendra Gwindan from Ananda Village is joining us, and we will be discussing the wonderful, beautiful, deep text Bible Whispers from Eternity, duplicated right there with Jitendra. And I'm doing a series of interviews with different people throughout the Ananda world that share whispers and have a deep connection to it. They share it with different audiences online and in person. And we get to explore how they dive into it, and we get inspired and on fire for this beautiful text. I'm going to introduce Jitendra a little bit more in a moment. He's going to start with a brief chant in some form and a prayer. So welcome, Jitendra.
Thank you, brother. It's such a joy. I'm just so happy to see you hosting programs and satsangs such as this, because I think as much as we explore many other ways of sharing, I think that friendship and joy and, sharing the common interest of Master's scriptures, it doesn't get any better than this.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled. So everybody get your devotion heart open and get the kettle on, and let's enjoy God now through whispers.
So I thought before we pray, we could chant Om 3 times and feel that we're tuning in and listening and feeling for Divine Mother's presence within us and all around us as we offer ourselves into this vibration of Om. Let's begin with a prayer together. Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
friend, beloved God,
friend, beloved God,
great Masters,
great Masters,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashai,
Ahiri Moshe,
Swami Shiv Deshwar,
Swami Shivdeshwar,
beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda ji, saints of all religions, we humbly invoke thy presence. Divine Mother, we offer you our lives. Come to us now. Saturate us with thy blessings, that we may awaken to the realization that we are one with thy love. We are one in thy joy. We are one with thee. Thou art our beloved. Om Shanti Shanti. So meditate just for a moment to listen and feel that presence of the Masters, presence of Divine Mother. Behind each thought, behind each feeling. That presence of the Sacred Heart that resides within us, that belongs to God, to Divine Mother.
Okay, thank you, Jitendra. And Jitendra is such a good friend of mine. We're very dear brothers. We've been monks together at Ananda Village, and we've been to the south of France with a group of monks and went to Lourdes together. We've had some great adventures inwardly and outwardly, and so we stay in close contact. If I was to describe Jitendra in just a few words, I would say a true lover of God and Guru. He's a great soul. I think many of you will know him already, but what do you, maybe just introduce yourself with a few words and however you feel to.
Well, in fact, I always, we know what Swamiji Swamikananda said of, when he was asked the question, what would you like to be known for in your life? Because his list of accomplishments are quite vast. But, for me, I always thought, well, I hope that I'm always just remembered as a simple devotee who had a great love for God. So I think that's great as an introduction. Just to say that I serve with Online with Ananda, and with a group of wonderful souls here at Ananda Village. And our team is ever expanding because this work is this outreach through courses, through our online community, through different various live events. The work that's expanding online, which includes what we're doing right now through this wonderful program Sanjan's hosting, in all communities and everyone who is serving the world, and even outside of Ananda, really, everyone is heeding that call. And so much of my life is consumed by that, is helping manage Online with Ananda. And I love the fact that it's all consuming, because that's kind of my goal each day, is to be consumed by Guruji. And outside of that, I think that there's not much left to Jitendra. But just to say also, the time that Sanjan and we spent together, I think that friendship is becoming more and more clear to me how precious it really is. And to spend time, nourishing our friendships and is as important than everything else, I think. And so it's such a joy to be here. And if you want to know more about me, Sanjan, you're going to have to, or you want others to know more about me, you're going to have to ask me questions.
Well, I will do that. Just to say, for those people, we had a wonderful interview with Usher last week or so, a couple of weeks back, about whispers. And actually, Usher has done a fantastic interview of Jitendra in the Next Wave interviews. And if you want to know a little bit more in depth about Jitendra, in the recording, I'll put the link. But if you just look up Jitendra and Usher, I think it's Next Wave interviews or something like that. There's a beautiful story of Jitendra's life. So I really encourage you to hear about the filmmaker, musician, surfer, lover of God, and much more. So here we are with Whispers. We both have, we actually we were talking as friends a few weeks back. Maybe it was even before Christmas. I can't remember exactly when. And we were going to do a kind of satsang with us talking about our times as monks and going to Lourdes in the south of France, which was a very deep time for both of us. But then I kind of really felt that I wanted to explore Whispers, and I know that this book is just really touches your heart. You don't necessarily share a class per se, but you share Whispers continually throughout the many classes and throughout the virtual community, which is this, 300 plus community of devotees around the world who are come together online, a wonderful, really the biggest community in Ananda. And so you get to really share Whispers in that way. But I know that it has touched your heart so deeply. And maybe you'd just like to begin with sharing, when you first saw Whispers, maybe it was early on in your path, and your kind of journey with it to where it really started to speak to your heart.
Yeah, it's a good question about, I really appreciate the fact that you speak of Whispers with such reverence, because, and perhaps, many of us know this already, but, our guru came to, he explained to us that he came to bring us the main scriptures that we should be absorbing into our life and consciousness vibrationally, which is, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, and then he included Whispers as the three main scriptures that he came to bring, to draw our attention to. So I just appreciate the reverence in which you treat it, and I think that I also feel that reverence in, the first time that I felt interested in Whispers from Eternity, I think that the first thing that I was attracted to was actually the cover. I just thought it was a very beautiful cover with the lotus flowers and Master's name, and I just thought, what is this? Whispers from Eternity. So I purchased it without knowing actually much about it. But in the very beginning, I believe this was actually one of the first books after the Autobiography of a Yogi that I purchased.
So roughly when was that,
So 2005.
Okay.
I would say, yeah, I would say I probably purchased this maybe in 2006.
Okay.
And I was going to this meditation group that was hosted from a dear friend of mine, who also sometimes invited channelers to come, like people to channel the light beings. And at first I was like, I don't know if this is for me. I was into the meditation, but it was a lovely group. And this one evening, this woman who was channeling the light beings said, Jitendra, or my name was Adam at the time, can I speak to you? So I said yes. And so the light being said, are you writing chants? Like, are you creating chants, music? And my first thought was, no, why would I create any chants, new chants? I have all of my guru's chants, all of Swamiji's stuff. Even at that time, I realized that's not me. And I don't feel that's really what is supposed to be happening. And she said, well, it feels like your guru wants you to write chants, to engage in this way. And I said, okay, thank you, but I dismissed it. And I thought, okay, I'll have a conversation with my guru. Thanks. So I got home later that evening and I prayed to Guruji and I said, is this true? Like, is this true that you want me to, be creative and tune into creating chants? I have lots of doubt that this is actually true. And so I sat down and I had Whispers from Eternity next to my harmonium. And I thought, well, beloved Guru, if this is true, then you need to just create something very magical through me to make me believe that this is true. So I felt guided to just flip through Whispers from Eternity randomly. And then whatever the first thing I chose or saw, that there would be a chant about that. And so I flipped through the book and arrived at From Peak to Peak and this Whispers reading. And all of a sudden, this chant that I did write, Guruji wrote through me, this chant just flowed through me within a moment. And it just felt very powerful. As I never share it publicly, but I have played it much and it feels very powerful. And I felt Guruji flowing through me. Now, I think it was less about the chant and more about feeling that openness for letting Guruji to flow through me. And Whispers was the catalyst. I flipped it randomly, and I thought that Whispers became more than a book. It became a doorway in which Guruji could flow and create through me. So that was the first actually moment that I thought, wow, there's something special about this book.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then did you use it much during that time? And you know, you became a monk. When did you become a monk?
It's 2012.
2012. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Really? Was it 2012? Yeah.
Yes. So it was Swami's birthday in 2012 that I kneeled before Swamiji and said, Swamiji, I feel that I want to become a monk and move to India and to be with you.
Were you at the village when that happened, or was this in front of his picture?
Yeah, no, it was at the village while he was here.
Wow. So I was there at that time. So did we connect then?
I remember because I also I think I met you before 2012 here at the village because I was coming to the village I think the first time in 2008 or something like that, 2007, 2008, something like that. And I used to come like twice a year because I was making the documentary. That and also I felt obviously guided to be here and be able to keep meeting with Swamiji, coming back. And so I had been practicing as a monk for actually 2 years, really, before I had taken my official vow in 2012. But I felt to ask Swamiji in person if this felt right. And of course, as many of us know, Swamiji didn't say yes or no. He just said, well, I think that sounds like that could be a good idea. It's like, you never say yes or no, but I took it as a yes. And so I took my vow and then moved to India.
So during 2000, so you've picked up the book 2006, kind of early on after Autobiography of a Yogi. You've had this, you know, wonderful connection to it immediately. And then are you using it throughout? Is it, you know, what's the flow leading up to, you know, when it really kind of strikes your heart? Or is it striking your heart all the way along? What's the flow here?
Yeah, good question. I think that for me it took really forming a relationship with it. I realized that it's something that there was a moment where Whispers really became alive for me, which really corresponded also to my relationship to Divine Mother, which our trip to Lourdes in, don't remember what year that was, but
2015,
yeah, maybe 2015. Yeah, I think so. So that actually was the time that Whispers came into much more of a living, powerful channel of Master, Divine Mother, and God. But leading up to that, I feel I used the book almost every day because I sensed a power when tuning into these prayer demands, and I was also very inspired by not so much of the words or the variation of prayers, but rather the vibration that I could feel in this book more than any other book. I felt a response, and so I often used it as a prayer during meditation. So, going into meditation or afterwards. So I was using it more almost as a technique, I think, for a long time. As I know that Guruji writes in the beginning of the Whispers from Eternity, which I know, Sanjan, you've now already placed just such importance and emphasis of the power of the beginning that Guruji writes about how to pray and about how to use whispers. And so in some way I was kind of using it as a coping mechanism. And that's sort of what is written in the beginning of this book, is that, it can be used as this coping mechanism. And so I think I was using it just as that. But I could feel that I was being fed. I was being fed by it. And so why wouldn't I keep, feeling that nourishment and feeling,
Mm.
just this nourishment? I kept returning to this as one of the main sources of feeling master's vibration. And I think so, more as a technique, but also of continued, I could feel a continued relationship starting to grow. But it didn't happen just automatically, even after this experience, which certainly helped provoke a deeper interest. But I still, just like any relationship, I had to give it attention. I had to welcome it in. Many times I would take the book with me, and put it in my backpack so that if I went to the beach or went on a hike, that I could sit down and read from whisper. So it became a technique, but then that technique started to dissolve, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. And so when for me, it was really, I came to the path in 2009, and I went to it straight away, and I did do some work with it, but it didn't grab me really deeply. I think I was exploring too many different things, in the beginning. I could sense its power on the one hand, and I think I've already told you, and I've shared this with Usher, I was, changing the words of one of the whispers, and, you know, uh, uh, so I didn't really dive deeply into it, but I could sense its power, especially, the introduction. I don't think I even read completely at that time, just kind of, the keys to demands and the hints to the reader, not the rest of it, because it's, you kind of hear this answered prayers, and then you kind of want to get into the prayers. You're kind of eager. So it's very easily missed, the introduction. So that was kind of how, it took really till last year for me to really properly connect with it. So then where do you want to, do you want to go to this moment where you kind of have this deep time, or is there something more to share about it before that?
Well, I mean, there's a quote that actually it's in the very, very beginning of Key to Demands in the book.
Mhm.
And it's interesting. I don't know who, this would be a question that I would love to ask somebody who knows, but I have to assume it was obviously either Swamiji or Master, but I was curious to see if it was Master. Is under Key to Demands, it says, please read carefully.
Mm.
And I thought that was a very, a nice little prelude to read this, not just this page or this section, but please read carefully. It's like trying to refine the way that we're tuning into this book. I thought that carried a lot of weight. But in this first sentence, I thought, go ahead, Sanjan, did you have a thought about that?
Just to say on that, it's very interesting, because if you think about all of the books that Swami and Master have written, you could easily say, please read carefully. But here in Whispers, it's written out, which really does underline, as you are saying, the depth and the power of this scripture. So
yeah, no, I mean, maybe we should we should put a sticker or something on all Swamiji's books, everything Master's books. Please read carefully. Yeah, so this beginning, spiritualizing a prayer or a demand, just the very first paragraph here, I just love this. Just as a wet match, when struck, does not produce fire, so a mind saturated with restlessness cannot produce the fire of concentration, even when one makes great efforts to strike the cosmic spark. The flame of inspiration is hidden behind the lines of each prayer and demand in this book. So I thought, that in between the lines, I mean, it's just, please read carefully, because if you just read what's on the page, you're not going to really tune into what's in between the lines. And that, I feel that, and maybe Sanjan, you can speak of this too, is I felt that until the book really became alive for me, there was still a little bit of that sense of, I was using a wet match, trying to, although there were sparks that were created, which even a little spark of the vibration of this book was enough to keep me going with it. But did you experience that as well?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I can relate to that totally. It's just until it really strikes and opens the heart, it is hard to. I think if you could read in between the lines, it does strike you, but I just didn't have any connection to it to the level that I have in the last year, when it really did feel like it was opening my heart and there was a grace coming. It really feels like a grace comes in when Whispers touches you, a special grace that you can draw. And I think a special grace is happening at this time, because I think many people are turning to it, with Jyotish also sharing about it. Many people are turning to it, but just anyway, I think a special grace has to touch you to speak to you in your heart. So
Yeah, I think it's beautiful what you just said about grace. I mean, grace has always been such an interesting phenomenon to me, just hearing the word grace just makes your heart melt, and that's what we could even, if Swamiji stayed alive another 50 years, maybe he would have wrote a song, what we need is, grace, in addition to light. Maybe we would have done light, joy, it would have created probably thousands of more songs.
yeah.
But grace is really what you just said. If you were to ask me to describe Whispers from Eternity in one word, that would be the word of grace. And it's so, grace is one of those things that is invisible in many ways. And I love the quote from our guru who says, thou art frozen, thou art invisible, but thou art frozen by my devotion's frost. And I feel that Whispers from Eternity really does that. It crystallizes, that grace so we can feel it and feel that, we just melt. We melt, and all of that is God, and all that is Guruji. And I think.
I mean, for me, it really is. It's really deepened my feeling, my heart, and my love through diving into Whispers. I mean, we've kind of spoken a little bit about this at times, but it just has really transformed everything very, very deeply for me. And I really feel like this is the scripture for me. Like, there's the Bhagavad Gita and the Bible. Of course, these are very deep scriptures, but I just feel that it's the how to love God, make love to God, the divine romance. It really feels that very, very deeply. So.
Yeah, I thought as much as I think it requires a relationship, but I also think it's, do you think that your Whispers from Eternity for a very long time was a book.
Mm-hmm.
I perceived it as a book. I treated it like a book, all of these things. So of course it's going to be a book. But I feel that this book, to go back to our trip to Lourdes, Whispers from Eternity really had for me, a corresponding relationship to our trip to Lourdes, in fact. I feel that before our trip to Lourdes, Whispers from Eternity was still just a book, powerful book. To feel vibration of helping me open my heart and love God, to long for God, all of these things. But I have to give the credit to Divine Mother because, our trip to Lourdes was, I think, one of the major shifting points of this incarnation, in fact. If we would have known that before we went, we would have probably been a little more nervous about the trip, but a little more pressure would have been on you, Sanjan.
Well, it was just, I mean, I think for both of us, but I think especially for you, because you had some very, I mean, both of us, it was a deeply heart-centered experience. And of course, I think everybody knows Lourdes is where Bernadette Subaru saw divine, the Virgin Mary, Mother Mary, and over a period of 15 days or over a period of time, and this very deep experience. And it just was, you know, we were kind of looking forward to it, but I don't think either of us or the other monks really expected it to be so rich and powerful and deep. And I mean, you had a deep healing experience, and actually I feel not that you had a healing experience, but just a deeper connection to, I mean, it really transformed healing. And I know when we came back, it was a powerful experience. I don't know whether you want to share about that or just speak more about whispers. I'm not sure, but certainly it was an incredibly profound experience. You know, it was a pilgrim spot with thousands of people coming, and Divine Mother was right there, tangible and in our hearts and minds.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I mean, to say to with whispers is that I feel like, you know, for all of us, I think, who have read Autobiography of a Yogi, there it is, you know, in the first couple of chapters, our guru sinks us into the availability of Divine Mother, you know, for all of us. And, you know, even after reading the Autobiography of a Yogi, you know, it was there. It was introduced for the first time in this life. But, you know, I think that the trip to Lourdes, in fact, just a little side note, is a friend of mine, a dear friend, Brahmacharini Inez on the East Coast, about a year before I moved to the village, or actually in 2014, right before I moved to the village, she was telling me all about Saint Bernadette and in Lourdes in many ways, and her incorrupted body and all of these things. And I just kind of wasn't that interested because I feel like I've incarnated in this life with many Indian samskars. So, you know, I just wasn't into so much all that stuff. I was more into Krishna and, you know, doing puja and all of these things, which I still very much enjoy doing. But I wasn't so interested in the Catholic saints. And, you know, I was, of course, interested to some degree. But it was interesting that, like, that was a little insight, I think, too, of like, hey, this is what needs to happen in your life to go to Lourdes. And I mean, I think maybe we could do a whole Divine Mother satsang and talk about Lourdes separately, but
We should do
Whispers from Eternity, Whispers from Eternity, oh, go ahead.
No, you carry on. I think we're going to say the same thing.
So, I mean, just to say, Whispers came to life, I think, for me after that trip, of the power of Divine Mother really coming to life for me.
Yeah. And then you have this experience where you go on retreat, seclusion. Do you want to share about that at all, or?
Yeah. I mean, that's actually the moment where Whispers became. I think for a while after Lourdes, I became much more interested in Whispers as this doorway to awaken the living presence, you know, of our guru or Divine Mother or whatever else may happen through it. But it's one of the most powerful moments, actually, I think of. One of the more powerful moments of my stint of discipleship in the path so far was, which this is, it doesn't hold me in the highest light, but I'm absolutely happy to be sharing this story.
Share it however you feel. It doesn't.
But this was, I don't remember what year this was. It was after I think it was probably like the end of 2015 or 2016. And the monks all went to the meditation retreat here at Ananda. And all the monks were secluding together for 7 or 8 days.
And I had left the monastery by this time. So I think it was, I wasn't at this particular retreat. I think I left in 2015. So.
Right. Yeah, I don't remember you being there.
Yeah, no, I wasn't.
So this was actually one of the monastery, we were sadly missing Sanjan, so, which actually was I mean, that could be a whole nother satsang. I mean, just, that was really challenging when you left for me. So one of the things we're trying to magnetize the monastery by doing these long seclusions together, not in the same place, but at the meditation retreat, in case you've never been there, there's, it's an incredible place. If you ever want to take seclusion, or there are programs there once things open up, and there's cabins and there's bungalows, there's monkelos and everything in between. And so the monks were secluding in separate locations on the same grounds at the meditation retreat. Most of us were in little bungalows. And of course, we all are very motivated as monks to go deep, and I think that in our preparation, we always held each other, not in judgment, but held each expectation high, in terms of, let's go for this, let's dive deep, let's dive deep every day. Then the idea was, at the end of our seclusion, let's say on the 8th day, we would all come together in the temple and we would do an 8-hour meditation together. And so everyone seemed very motivated, and people were talking about, the different monks were talking about how they're gonna work on this and that. And I'm very inspired by chanting. Chanting has always been something very powerful for me. And so I decided, of course, I'm gonna dive deep into my meditation, read the books, and just be the all-star monk, for Divine Mother, for Guruji, just like, I want the ribbons, in the US military. The more ribbons you have, you're like, wow, this guy's really been, pretty good. So I thought, I'm, Divine Mother Master, I'm going for this. So I brought my computer with me. There's no internet up at the meditation retreat. So I brought my computer up with me, and I also have this little synthesizer, this little keyboard synth. And so I thought, I could create, some chanting, recording some chanting, and do a little, record a few chants, and do it really creatively and devotionally and inspiring, and not to share it even with anyone else, but just to do that. And so I brought some equipment to be able to record in silence, so no one could hear. And well, let's just say that this seclusion that started off with high hopes, I quickly found myself on day, I don't know if this was day 3 or whatever it was, staying up until 3 in the morning with my computer in the synthesizer, recording a rock album. Because I found a way with the synthesizer, with the program that I was working on with recording, is you could record drums and bass and guitar all silently, through the keyboard, and through like using the keys as drums, and So here I am, this monk trying to dive deep here. All the other monks who I sometimes would see, walking deep, like they're communing with God. And here I am, tired from the night before, recording this like techno, like rock and roll album, And so by like day 3, I thought, gosh, I am such a failure, Of course, I woke up, I did my meditation in the morning, I did my meditation in the evening, but, I was meditating for an hour and a half, 2 hours, wasn't really doing much more than that. And I just, as the seclusion went on, I went so far down, I had no motivation to chant and meditate. It was in the winter, so I couldn't really go outside. It'd be raining out. And I dived into this recording project, which just, I felt so much restlessness, and I felt so far from being worthy of Divine Mother or God. So long story short, it was a just a train wreck of a seclusion. And
I think this will come as great relief to people. I think it will ease people because we all have incredibly challenging seclusions. But
it just was, I can't say enough of how much I really felt that I was a failure. It was a really challenging time. And I just felt my devotion, just everything went away. It was bone dry.
you didn't feel nasty, you were saying to me, you just didn't feel anything.
Yeah, nothing. No, I mean, there was no whisper anywhere. It's like just so horrible, really. And now, I was asked to lead the 8-hour meditation on the 8th day. So I also had like sugar because the meditation retreat had like sugar out. I was just in rough shape. It's like, I was in rough shape. I was eating a lot of food. Everything you don't want to do in seclusion, basically, I did. So then the invitation was that I was going to lead the 8-hour meditation for, there was, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 monks that were there. Swami Prakash, who super deep soul, and Swami Lakshman and Swami Ramdas, and everyone was there, and I was the one who was supposed to lead this thing. So I thought, I'm in no shape. I'm in no shape to meditate 8 hours. I'm not in no shape to meditate 3 hours. I don't even want to meditate. So I thought that God answered my prayer there was a snowstorm that was going to hit and dump like 7 to 10 inches of snow, which we would then be stranded at the meditation retreat. So I actually went to Lakshman, who was staying in Swami's dome, and wrote a note saying, should we just postpone the 8-hour meditation for perhaps another time, play it safe, we can leave the night before, come back to the village. And, Lakshman, of course, like, thank you for your concern. And Lakshman was in charge of the monastery then. And he said, thank you for your concern, but let's see what Divine Mother does. Let's see. If it seems like it's piling up, we'll leave. And I said, okay. So I started to pray. I hope it snows, so like, I don't have to lead this 8-hour meditation. Like, let's just get out of here. Let's move on with our lives. So no snow came. It just was rain. And I woke up that morning just not feeling good and just thinking, gosh, this is horrible. And I get to the temple, I energize. All of the monks are like already in the temple meditating deeply, already super still. And, here comes Jitendra. It's like rummaging his way to the front of the temple, sitting down. And, again, I sat down and I just felt, what if I'm just I felt no presence, I'm supposed to lead this thing. And I said, Divine Mother, I said, Guruji, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, but this is just who I am, and help me, be with me. That's all I ask. And so I started chanting Om, and the monks were in meditation. I was chanting Om, again, just felt nothing. And then, I started with a prayer. We all prayed, but again, I felt nothing. And I was just thinking of Divine Mother, just come, help. And so I had whispers, because at that time, I carry whispers everywhere with me. And so after I did a chant or two, we were going to I thought, well, let's take a whispers reading into meditation. That might save the day a little bit. So I sat down and I grabbed whispers, and often what I do, which I really like this practice, is just flipping randomly through it, stopping on a page and feeling this is the first prayer, or whatever you see first is what Master wants you to read. That's for you. And I can't tell you how many times this has happened. And really what this day that unfolded with whispers is I flipped through the book randomly and I started to read. And I started to read, this is on page 144. It's like the 206th prayer. And I just flipped the book and saw the first thing that I saw, which I always practiced, was this prayer. Divine Mother, come thyself into the waiting temple of our love. And just at that moment of reading those words, the breath was just taken out of me. And I just was overwhelmed, just overwhelmed by Divine Mother. I could feel her living presence. It overwhelmed me. And so I just was so overwhelmed, but I thought, well, I need to try to continue reading this Whispers reading. And so it starts off, Divine Mother, be thou the only flame shining on the altar of our hearts. Burn away any darkness that lurks there. Divine Mother. And I couldn't, just starting off this reading, Divine Mother, be thou the only flame, I couldn't even say it. Words just couldn't, my heart was just in tears of the love that I could feel from Divine Mother. And of course, with a weeping, crying Jitendra monk, I slowly made my way with long pauses because I just felt so overwhelmed. And by the time that I finished reading this Whispers from Eternity, those 8 hours went by literally like 8 minutes. And I feel after that moment, Whispers from Eternity became this portal of accessing the living presence, the grace, the living grace. And so this particular reading, Divine Mother, come thyself into the waiting temple of our love, is one that I try to read often. And I feel that just by speaking about it now, I feel that response from Divine Mother. And so I think for all of us, how many years do you need to develop your relationship to Whispers? I think that's between you and Divine Mother or God, but I think all of us, there is that moment that with this particular scripture, this grace of Whispers from Eternity, I think that this book promises in some way every one of us to experience that grace that comes through this book. And so from that moment on, now this book, I feel it repeats this process for me that has, allows me to feel that living presence. And, I'm just so very grateful for Master's grace and blessings. Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel it so deeply as you share it. Just a beautiful, beautiful story and just incredible. Did you find afterwards, then it was easier to access that feeling in other Whispers and how did that, well, you kind of said that, but how was that kind of for you and how did you work with Whispers? Did you still do your opening up to, whatever came with the flicking of the pages, or how did you work with it and how did it touch you? How did it impact did it impact your meditations, your life, etc.?
Yeah, I think that I'm a big fan. I mean, number one, Swami Jyotish, who takes one Whispers in a row. I've been practicing that, which has really been really nice. And also feeling that I'm in tune with Jyotish and sort of his flow. And that means a lot to me. And so I've been doing that. But I have to say I'm more of the school of the randomization because I feel that it's not that I just do it unconsciously, but I try to first pray to Master and say, just that silent prayer of, what I need, you know what I need to hear, and so I still very much now every day will just randomly flip the book. The first thing that I see is what I read. In fact, a lot of satsangs, I can't tell you, probably hundreds of satsangs that I've done where I have very busy responsibilities where I don't have much time to prepare. for what I need to do. And so I can tell you how many times that I sat down and just said, Master, I need you. We all need you. So,
Wow.
and I can't tell you how many times just flipping and looking is the exact thread that really ties the whole thing together and infuses it with that grace. And so it's not just for, I think, us, it's also for, I think, I use it not only to flip for myself, but also as a way of praying for others, or tuning into a vibration before I pray for that individual. I often do it also for others.
Wow. That's beautiful. I love that you do that. Wonderful. I love that, this is what I really find so fascinating, is that I think that, Master gives direction in the introduction, and, people can follow that introduction. But when you really start to dive into it, you have creative ways of working with whispers as well, like, praying for others with whispers. That's a wonderful practice. Wow, I'm so glad you shared that. It's, I would never have thought of that, so beautiful. But that's, you're very much, you pray for a lot of people. I know that regularly every day. So you're kind of like a prayer warrior.
Like that, prayer warrior.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, well, one thing that I wonder, we were talking about our relationship, and you were sharing your story, which is, I think, perhaps it's, of course, I think it is different for everyone, but how you said, I was so inspired to hear when I just saw this excitement in you to be like, hey, whispers from eternity, huh? And it made me so happy that I could feel through you this awakening to this third key, And I just think that and I think I remember talking with you about this before, is if you just have a little bit of interest, because I started off with just interest, what is this? Wanting to just explore it, is that perhaps for many of us, it's going to be a process that slowly unfolds, And I was tuning into this, and I remembered that when I was young, I used to sleepwalk, which, if you don't know what that is, basically, as my parents would say it, I'd come out of my bedroom and, I would just, start to cook food, or I'd go outside. If it was snowing out, I would just start to open the back door of the house and just go outside with my pajamas. This is when I was small, like 8 years old.
I thought it was Lakshman in the monastery, but I think it was you. Maybe it was you.
That was me. He used to come into your room and just stare at you. But it's actually a very strange phenomenon that happens. And you're basically unconscious. Like your eyes are open, and I would come in, I would like even talking less likely, but I would just engage in activity, but you're unconscious. It's very fascinating.
It sounds
Only
startling. Quite startling for your mom and whoever. It's got to be strange. Wow.
Yeah, my mom would say that she'd wake up and I would just be standing over her bed, like looking at her, staring at her, and she'd be like, "Are you okay? Like, what's going on?" Yeah, it's very strange, very strange. But I remember my mom once told me that when she was talking about my sleepwalking, and it was very innocent, but my mom would always have to wake me up to go back to bed, because I would go again. Like once she said that my father and my mother were watching a movie, and they just all of a sudden I came out of my room and was just heading outside in the snow. It's like 0 degrees out. And I was like with my pajamas going outside, and they're like, "Where are you going?" It's like, "What are you doing?" Wow. Very strange. So my mom told me that I always had to wake you up really slowly. And that's what I always remembered when I always had these memories when I would sleepwalk with my mom being very caring and very gentle with me and just slowly kind of waking me up. And then I remember waking up and she would say, let's go back to bed. And I thought, how sweet that was my mom, just because she had been told that people who are sleepwalking, that it's actually unhealthy and very dangerous, and sometimes to wake them up with like, intensely. And so, I kind of thought how sweet, how Whispers from Eternity in our spiritual journey is very much like that. Divine Mother, we can't just get woken up all at once. As Guruji said, we have to expand our consciousness to withstand the liberating shock of omnipresence. And it's like we're slowly waking up through that grace. And I feel whispers
Yes.
from eternity. It's that
Yeah.
between the lines, it's the gentle process of, the mother awakening us. And I just feel that really describes whispers. Do you want to share a little bit about how, if you feel that's relevant to your process, and just care to share on that?
Yeah, I think it's, for me, I mean, kind of like you with, I do think it works with you, and it is whispering, and I think, and one of the things I've really got from whispers is just that God is always whispering and intensely wanting us, which I've heard before as a teaching, but I really feel that now with whispers. And just like you kind of at the meditation retreat, I don't know if this is true for everyone, but for me, it was, really, as I was going through a great challenge in my life, I was intensely wanting to have a deep relationship with Divine Mother. I feel for me, it was like it was like, okay, I have these desires and I have these habits and I have all these, things that I want to work on. But the most important thing for me is to love God intensely, because I really felt like my heart needed to kind of just let go and open and trust and I'm a very trusting person on the one hand, but I think deep down there's a part of me that doesn't fully trust people and not really deep down, and so I just kind of felt like the only way I'm going to heal is by knowing how to love God completely, and because I've got all this love that I want to share, but I just want to do it intensely. And I was just very, very intense in that need. And I feel that Divine Mother felt that deeply. And like now, no nonsense now, like we've kind of been doing our best, but we've kind of been playing at it. And now we want to go to it. So I feel like, it was always whispering to us, and it is that gentle, but I just feel there was an intensity of a need, and I just prayed, and then the feeling came, read whispers and dive into the introduction, and that was where it began. I chose one whisper. It was a short one called Divine Mother, Make Me Clean Again, and it really transformed everything for me. So it was the beginning of something that I think is going to be, for eternity, I could say, but for it's really just touched my heart so deeply, and it's really transformed how I pray outside of whispers, because I can feel it now when I lead energization exercises. I feel that cosmic energy coming in. I feel that concentration. I feel, the immortality in the body and in the mind. There's so much feeling in my spiritual life now through whispers. It's. I think I was telling you earlier that our friend Erin Vinaco had sent me a kind of an excerpt of a reading from, I think it was the
Divine Romance.
Divine Romance, and it was when Master was doing a Christmas meditation, and it was him praying and leading the meditation, and then he has this deep experience, and it's the conversation, it's the transcript of that conversation. And I found just from using whispers, I could tune into that in a way that I don't feel I would have been able to before. And as I think I said to you, I had such a my deepest experience of Christ through reading that transcript, because whispers had informed me and inspired me how to connect deeply to Master's words. And so it was just, wonderful.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think what you just said, I think, is actually very potent with, the how, and I think that it still remains for me, that journey of how to love God and how to relate, like you're saying, to the words or the presence through which we have, in some way, the physical manifestation of Guru's grace, which is, I think the physical is the mala, it's like doing our kriya, or everything, the mala, the kriya, the hamsa, all the books, the AY, everything is like this manifestation for us to be using to tune into that grace and that presence. And whispers, I remember, I try to actually remember this always, that Guruji said, that his response to that question, how do I love God? I think that's just one of the most potent questions for many people. And his response to that was, how can you love that which you don't know?
Mm.
Knowledge of God precedes love for God. Mm. And so what you just said, I think, is really one of the more like the precise essence of Whispers from Eternities. I think it teaches us to get to know God,
It really does.
By both, because it's called Whispers from Eternity. And I think it's also us learning how to talk to God, because in each Whispers reading, you can read that as if you're speaking to God, but also you can feel that sort of call and response in some way in each reading. So when I read it, just as we're taught with our meditation, is we do the techniques and then we rest and we enjoy the calm after effects. Well, same thing with Whispers. I think it's not something to just read and then close the book, but there's a two-part process here, which helps us get to know God, get to know how to love God, is by reading it as if we're speaking to God, inside of us, and then to listen, to listen. That's what I'd recommend for anyone who's getting started with Whispers, is to read Whispers from Eternity, but then close your eyes and try to listen, try to listen to whatever response is there. And I think that really helps us get to know God personally, as you were saying, Sanjan.
Yeah. There's so much. I mean, I could go on for another hour in just kind of sharing Whispers. We've kind of gone a little over our time. But so I kind of feel we should maybe draw to a close, but I feel, reticent to do so. But, just it's been beautiful. I mean, I genuinely really feel, I've known Jitendra since whenever we did meet, but more intimately since 2014, 2015. And Jitendra has not really changed. He's just this deeply intense lover of the divine, and who is passionate to share the teachings with as many people as possible and to share Guru's mission. And, I really recommend that you if you're not a member of the virtual community, that you join the virtual community. You go and visit onlinewithananda.org. I hope that's the website address now. I don't know. It may have changed. But but I really feel that, you know, Whispers I think you've been working with it longer than I, and I really can feel its power and magic just flowing through you and touching many people in the virtual community. I think many people are practicing this prayer every day, and like Jyotish is doing. Is that correct? Some people are kind of choosing
Yeah.
to. I remember a post going out.
Yeah, I don't know how many are doing it, but we have, a little over 350 devotees and just truth seekers on this path from, over, 20, 30 different countries. So, and how many are practicing that? I would say that probably many are tuning into Whispers as, I carry this everywhere I go, and my satsangs, I always try to share from it.
And I'll be speaking to Dion in March, because he at the moment leads a Whispers class within virtual community. I think that's coming to an end at some point, but you'll always be able to access the recording. So I'll be speaking to him in March. Any last words just to our viewers, listeners?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think really helped me, if you ever see me, you can ask to see my Whispers from Eternity. You'll find a lot of things in here. There's a lot of rose petals from Korean initiations from India and Italy. And, I try to feel, just as you might see the stereotype of the archetype Christian who always has his Bible in his hand. Not to say that that's, we might think like that's a little extreme or whatever one might think, but I think it's actually quite beautiful. And in fact, I really, I try to take Whispers with me everywhere I go. Not if I'm going to the master's market to buy some fruit, you're probably not going to see me with it. I'm not, carrying it around like this, praise the Lord. But I carry it with me everywhere I go. And I try to feel that it's a part of me. It's a part of everything, and to add things to it, like special notes that you might get that inspire you to God, but to really feel this as a scripture. And I think if you carry it with you as a friend in some way, it's really fun and really special to help facilitate this process of having it become more of a doorway to feeling just that absolute certainty of God's love and Divine Mother's presence. So, and to have fun with it.
I know we're 7 minutes over, but do you want to read just the one that I mentioned? I think you read it at Christmas. I can't remember if it was exactly, because you have. I mean, there was just such power in any of the Whispers that you share. Which one did I say it was? I think it was.
Yeah. O Divine Mother, I am thine, for thou art eternally mine.
No, not that one. Although you could do that, but that's a little longer. I was thinking I was made for thee.
Oh yeah, so this
201.
Yeah.
Which is really a poem, but they're all poetic and poets. So if you want to read this, because I know this touches your heart, and you're really a great vessel for this.
Yeah, I think that just to say what I do with this is it's nice to memorize this. Sometimes I, need to reference it, but I experimented with this, and I practiced this as my beginning prayer in meditation for several months, and very, very beautiful to feel that each day we're leading into the day with that thought that the life of my life is you, Guruji. My life is you, Divine Mother. And so let's close our eyes and feel that this is your soul, this is your heart that is affirming and offering ourselves into that living presence that we carry with us in every moment, whether we are aware of it or not, that presence is there. And so offering ourselves at the feet of our Guru, the feet of Divine Mother, let's just inwardly repeat or just follow along and feel this is your own soul whispering to God, whispering to Guruji. I was made for thee alone. I was made for dropping flowers of devotion gently at thy feet on the altar of the morning. My hands were made to serve thee willingly, to remain folded in adoration, waiting for thy coming. And when thou comest to bathe thy feet with my tears, my voice was made to sing thy glory. My feet were made to seek thy temples everywhere. My eyes were made a chalice to hold thy burning love and the wisdom falling from thy nature's hands. My ears were made to catch the music of thy footsteps echoing through the halls of space, and to hear thy divine melodies flowing through all heart tracks of devotion. My lips were made to breathe forth thy praises in thine intoxicating inspirations. My love was made to throw incandescent searchlight flames, to find thee hidden in the forest of my desires. My heart was made to respond to thy call alone. My soul was made to be the channel through which thy love might flow uninterruptedly into all thirsty souls.
My gosh. Oh, that was phenomenal. Wow. Thank you so much, Jitendra. I kind of, in a way, don't want to say anything because it was so deep for me. I don't know how it was for everyone else, but it touched me deeply on Christmas Day when you shared it in the meditation.
Well, thank you, Sanjan, for, I think that it's such a blessing and gift. I'm sure Master and Swamiji and all the other great ones are just rejoicing at, the fact that you're bringing more of a spotlight to this scripture. And I think, it's a real blessing, and thank you for asking me to, be a part of this with you, and just very grateful for, of course, our friendship in eternity, but also to
Me
be
too.
in this way.
A great deal to me, and let's do another satsang or two about Divine Mother and Lords at another point. I will, in the recording of this, place a link to the virtual community. You can go to it online anyway. Also to Jitendra's interview with Asha, and also to share that on Friday, in a couple of days at 2 p.m, I'll be interviewing Jyotish and Devi, the spiritual directors of Ananda, about Whispers from Eternity. And next week we have 2 more interviews as well, with Padma and Riemann and Keshava Betts, who also lead Whispers programs. And then I have a online Whispers from Eternity retreat on the 27th of February, and that'll be in the information below. Jitendra, nice. My goodness, my heart is open and filled with divine love and divine friendship. So thank you, great soul. Jai Guru.
Jai Guru, much love to you, brother. You and too. To everyone who might be tuning in, thanks for joining us, and I wish you blessings that you may, if you don't have a copy, it starts with that. I would recommend a physical copy.
Actually, it's got a new cover now. It's actually the new ones. I've got a picture of Master. There's a new.
That's right. That's right.
So.
Very nice.
Yeah. Okay. God bless everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Jitendra.